Hello and welcome to my presentation on the letters against Brighton's imperial memory of the First World War. So what I mean by this is that there's a certain rhetoric within Brighton of how the Indian troops were treated during the First World War that came into Brighton to receive hospital and care. If you actually look to the left, there's one of the patients here who's it's labelled the brave little Gurkha, aged 16, holding the flower given to him by the Queen. This is really important because, like we'll come to speak of in a bit later, it was very much used for press and to show a certain agenda. And this agenda still lives on and is sort of the legacy that is known in Brighton at the moment. But this may or may not be quite the truth. So you might be thinking, why were there so many Indians in Brighton at the time? And that's because as tens of thousands of Indian troops, also known as sepoys, were sent to the front lines, obviously a lot of them died and some got, well, a lot got injured. And the British Army and allies, they had to find somewhere to put these soldiers. And what the problem was for the Allies is that they didn't want to put the Indian soldiers in the same hospitals as with the European white soldiers. So it was very racial and along racial lines. And they had to have their own camps, their own hospitals. And so yeah, this is what happened. And the mayor of Brighton offered up the city to house these troops. And a big thing about that is that one of the buildings used was the Brighton Pavilion. Obviously, this was a palace. The King George used to use it as a sort of pleasure dome, and it's Indo-Semitic as for style. So it's very it's got very Asian-looking inside and interiors, and it is a stunning place. If you haven't been, and it's well worth visiting. And also the Kitchen Indian Hospital, that's now Brighton General Hospital. And what's not really known about that is it beforehand it was used as a workhouse, and because it was then turned into a hospital, all those in the poorest fringes of society that were in the workhouse were then made homeless, and a lot of them ended up being living on the streets and in parks. So again, this is sort of another side of the rhetoric that isn't really spoken about. While researching the Indian troops in Brighton, I came across a video by Brighton Dome, and it sort of epitomizes the idea.
Brighton, their help has enabled us to find a letter which was sent from a hospital in Brighton back to India.
They love Brighton. They love the people of Brighton. They just love the place. One Indian soldier woke up from the music room in the Royal Pavilion and thought he had died and woke up in heaven.
The gentleman we heard there was a local historian, and as you heard him say, they said, oh, they love Brighton, they love the area, they love the people. But this doesn't seem to be the truth when we look at letters by some Indian soldiers, or in this case Nepalese, the Gurkhas, and it's really interesting, sort of their side of it, what they say, not the imperial colonialist agenda. And here we can see the first half actually is very racial. He's a Gurkha himself, and he's basically saying that the Indian soldiers are lazy. He says the Gurkhas are all disgusted with the natives of India. So again, there's more racial things there. But the main part of this is it says, but still this place is a very large prison. I cannot put on my belt, nor can I double, which means run, or I am troubled with coughing and sneezing. But I tell the Sahibs, which means the white Europeans here, that I am all right, because I say that from this hospital I have no chance of going direct to India. Perhaps I will go to France. So again, he's saying it's a prison. He's saying he doesn't seem to be that happy about being there. And like I've seen with a lot of the letters I've read, he just wants to go home. He wants to go back to India. He doesn't want to be in Europe anymore. And we see that a lot in a lot of the letters. Here you can see it was sent from the Kitchener's Indian Hospital, the one that we saw a photo of earlier on in Brighton. and sent in July 1915. What is interesting at the bottom, you see here, it says letter passed. So all these letters went through censoring, and that's really important to remember, because these letters are the only sort of voice that these Indian soldiers have surviving today. There's no memoirs, there's nothing, and the only voice they have has been censored. So again, this is really important to remember when we think of the memorial, that what we remember of these soldiers, their voice has been censored from the very start. Okay, on to the next one. Another letter here. It goes, England is a fine country, but we are kept like prisoners who are in jail. All the Indians are, as it were, in jail. So again, they are. It's not the pleasure garden. It's not the pleasure dome. It's not the. They're not in the. They might be in a grandeur, in a beautiful palace, but they don't have. They can't. They don't have freedom of movement. They have to stay there. If they leave, they have to be with an officer. They're not free to go anywhere they want. Again, so this letter talks a lot about, I think, shows the general problem that the Indian troops had. It's actually set from Milford-on-Sea, which is a bit further down from an Indian military depot. But a lot of the letters I've read are also like this, but this says it best. It says, I have been wounded twice, and now this is the third time that I'm being sent to the trenches. The English say it's all right. How can it be all right? As long as one is unhurt, so long they will not let one off. In Peshawar, so that means the highest Lord, so God. If God allows, I will escape, but the butcher does not let the goat escape. So clearly, the Indian soldiers in this letter are the goat, and the butcher is the war, is the Western Front. But also, I think very much the butcher is the English that are sending these troops to die and to get hurt there. And you must feel the desperation of these troops. They know that as soon as they heal or are fit and ready to go, they're sent back to the French lines. They're literally in limbo, waiting to be sent back to the front lines. And how can they be happy in that situation? I think it's almost impossible. And if they have got an injury that's like a missing limb and they can't fight, then that is the only way they'll go back to India. All they want to do in most of these letters is go back home. They don't want to be in Europe anymore. If anything, they've been sold a false idea of what Europe is. And just quickly, so this is a Brighton Dome in the background of the sepoys at the front, and it was very much used as propaganda, as the British government to sort of push and say, look, we're doing all these great things, but look at the faces on these men. They don't look that happy. They don't look pleased to be there. They know they're being used to try and show how great the British Empire is, and to sort of sell the idea. So Veronica Kant explains in her book India in the First World War that the British were proving to the Indian masses that the ruling class was just and fair, and the British ruling class own personal behaviour was somehow beyond reproach. And this is shown even more in the comment on the bottom of the van. Is from east to west for the motherland. You have to think to yourself, what motherland is that? Is that England? Because that's not their motherland. So yeah, again, it's really interesting. And last of all, just to finish off, you have to think about these soldiers themselves. Yes, they had staple meals. They had their food. They were being treated in general quite well, but they were still being segregated. And it wasn't, in their eyes, it wasn't their war to fight. They were there because of the British Empire. And we remember in Brighton now, if you look at if you go to Brighton Dome, they celebrate the having the Indian troops there. But do you think the Indian troops that left were celebrating going back to the front lines, or even they were lucky enough to go back home? I personally don't think so. I think mainly you just need to remember it was all for the British Empire's gain. It was all to carry on colonization, to have these troops there, to have them looking great, looking happy, to praise the troops that did fight. But in the long run, they weren't fighting for their country. They weren't protecting their country as the English were. They were fighting to maintain and to support an empire that ruled over them. And I think that's the true memory and memorial that is ignored today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. That's my bibliography. Thank you.